Good afternoon, everybody. We're here on the South Florida Hospital News and Healthcare Report education series. And today we're having our webinar on hurricane preparedness, and a little bit different than one might think. We're going to talk about hurricane preparedness before and after a hurricane, and what you need to do, what you need to know, and be able to act on on spur of the moment and act wisely, as one might say. Presenting today is going to be Marty Jed from Jed Lawyers. Marty, you want to introduce yourself
Sure,
and Nick?
sure. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Marty Jed, and I'm the managing partner of Jed Lawyers. And I'm also Charles Felix's friend. I've been friends with Charles for, I think, 10 years. We've been working together for almost or over 10 years now,
Oh yeah, easily. Yep.
easily over 10 years, where we've done work together with the hospital newspaper. And Charles has helped us out tremendously in the community. So thank you for that, Charles.
Hmm. You're
Our
welcome.
firm is a multi-practice firm, which I'll go into in a little bit, with practices or offices throughout the state of Florida. We're about 100 people total, 20 attorneys throughout the state, and we represent consumers and we help people who have been wronged by insurance companies, whether it's medical providers, whether it's consumers or homeowners in an insurance claim. We represent those people. And also with me is my chief marketing officer, Nick Gadient, who who's worked with us for over 2 years and has a great expertise in the digital side, digital marketing, as well as um, you know, traditional marketing as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Marty. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Yep. Hey, Charles, do I have the ability to use my screen now, or do you have to unlock me?
Be I made you a co-host, so if you agree to that, you should be able to make that work for you.
Okay, I'm going to try to get my screen up and take you folks through this presentation. Can you just guys let me know if you see the presentation?
We
Yes.
do. Yep.
You do. Okay. Yay. It worked. Okay. It's the hardest part of the deal. Um, Once again, my name is Marty Jed. Thank you for allowing me to address this group. Our firm was founded in 1995 by my partner, Glenn Jed, with a headquarters in Boca Raton. We have consistently grown the firm throughout the years. As I mentioned, we're about 100 people throughout the state of Florida, 20 attorneys with offices in Boca Raton, Fort Myers, Naples, Sarasota, Panama City, soon to be Pensacola, and soon to be Jacksonville. So we're throughout the state of Florida, and we're proud to represent the people who live in this wonderful state. We are a full service law firm with multiple practice areas, and no order of preference. They are property damage, which we're here to talk about today, hurricane claims, or how to really avoid a hurricane claim. Real estate, we do purchases and sales, different types of real estate law. We also handle wills, estates, and trusts, along with asset protection. And our largest practice area is representing medical providers, where we help them collect under the no-fault system, also known as the PIP system. And we have a personal injury or bodily injury division where we handle more significant types of cases. We try to stay away from the soft tissue types of cases, but we do also represent those types of clients as well. Just by way of background, I've been in, before I got on this phone call, I was on a phone call with a client in Panama City, who I can't say the name, but it's a large condominium association with it's a 20-story building, and they just retained our services 30 days ago because they're about $1.5 million short on the claim. And the reason I bring this up today is June 1st is hurricane season. June 1st starts hurricane season. And the premium went from $80,000 a year, which was actually a pretty good premium, to $240,000 a year for the building. And the reason that the insurance company basically said that they increased the premium was to cover all the losses in the panhandle. So as Charles mentioned before, the insurance market and the insurance companies really have no mercy or no soul on obviously, number one, paying claims, but number two, raising premiums. And as I've seen it myself, I've never seen my premium go down any year, whether it was a hurricane year or non-hurricane year. My homeowner's insurance has, for the past 20 years I've lived in Florida, gone up significantly sometimes. So that's something that unfortunately happens, and you have to pay attention to that. But as I mentioned before, we've been doing this work for quite some time now. I've handled thousands of claims myself. One of our really biggest projects, I'll call it, was working in Hurricane Sandy in 2012. That was our first kind of big project where we actually went out of the state of Florida and represented homeowners in New Jersey and New York and handled over 2,000 claims representing homeowners, commercial property owners, and landlords against insurance companies. And unfortunately, but for the help of us, those poor citizens or those poor people would not have gotten their claims paid properly. And that's just the nature of the business. And being that we're in South Florida, one of the most hurricane prone states, we have to take precautions to protect our property. And we always tell our clients, it's better to prepare before than deal with this afterwards. And hopefully some of the related items I can talk to you about will help you protect your property, protect your business, and protect your homes. And it's at any point during this conversation, it's also important, if there's any questions, you can interrupt me and ask those questions. So look, this year, no one knows what's going to happen, but if you look at NOAA, they predict it to be a pretty active hurricane season. Last year was active. The past 3 years were really active in South Florida with Michael, Sally, Irma. Those claims or those storms have really caused hundreds of billions of dollars of damage. If you think about if anyone was here in 2004 and 5 when we had Charlie and Wilma, those hurricanes, everyone thought those were really big monetary damages. But the last 5 years, the insurance companies, unfortunately, have really gotten their clocks cleaned, and it's not their fault or our fault. It's not anyone's fault. But the hurricane seasons in the last 3 years have really caused a tremendous amount of monetary damage to Florida and other states, other Gulf Coast states as well. And unfortunately, the insurance company has paid out a ton of money, which that's the business they're in, and taking risk. And hopefully they're there to pay the claims at the end of the day. But again, more importantly, is to be prepared before the storm hits, whether it's your house or your business. And just some simple things that are kind of common sense. But if you live on a barrier island, or you live on a floodplain, or you live in an area that's close to coastal flooding, you have to have an evacuation route. And it's a basic concept, but most people don't realize it. What happens if a road is closed? What is the way to go to get out of here? How can I get out of harm's way quickly? If you recall, a couple of years ago, I live in Broward County in Parkland. And if you remember, I think it was Irma was coming up the coast. All of my friends ran to Orlando. I stayed put. And then the people who went to Orlando then had a truck because the storm changed paths and went to Tallahassee. So literally I had friends that drove from Parkland to Orlando, Orlando to Jacksonville, Jacksonville to Georgia to dodge the storm. To me, that was just stupid and asinine. I would never do that. So you do need to have an evacuation route, but you need to know when to put that evacuation route into plan. Just common sense. I live in Broward, where most of my power lines are underground. Charles, I know you live in East Boca, which is more of a older community, not older people, but just older homes. Most of your lines are probably above ground.
Right. In fact, they just buried they tested one street in my subdivision and put actually 2 streets underground. But again, the transmission lines are coming in above ground, so it's kind of like it looks.
So
good,
I say
but
that
not
to
necessarily.
assess your personal property or your personal business, because I felt confident, and I don't have a generator, that if we lost power where I live, it'll be less than most people who lived east, where there were lines that blew down. So I stayed put. I had air conditioning in my refrigerator the whole time, where a lot of people were discomforted with, number one, leaving their properties, but number two, losing power. Second common thing is it's called the disaster kit. I call it a ditch bag. I'm a boater, and that's a term we use in boating, but I have a ditch bag, and it includes copies of my driver's license, copies of my kids' birth certificates, copies of my insurance policy, deck page. I don't have the whole policy with me, but it has basic things that are necessary for you to access in the event you have to leave your home or your home gets flooded or destroyed. Nowadays, most people have access to a cloud. So I would recommend having your documents stored in the cloud. That would include your auto insurance policies, your homeowner's insurance policies, your medical insurance, your Blue Cross, whatever the case may be. Your kids' social security numbers, important phone numbers for other people involved, like your work. Who are the contact lists? Do you have a daisy chain of people that you call in the event of an event of a hurricane. Our office employs a texting system. So we're able to text every single employee via text with updates about the office and really updates about them. We don't really care about our office blowing over. We have insurance, but we want to make sure our employees are safe and their families are safe. So we employ a text messaging system to communicate with all of our employees. Obviously, they're throughout the state, so different locations have different needs and different potential disasters or potential property damages. So that's important. Also, have adequate supplies at home. I talk about this, and we all know about the mad Costco rush for water and paper towels and toilet paper. I've actually loaded myself up now for my hurricane season. I have my backup gas. I have my backup paper towels. I got my backup toilet paper, and I got my backup water. I'm not one of those guys that buys 15 cases of water. I do buy 4 cases, and I leave those on the side for the hurricane. And I think that's adequate. Obviously, judge that yourself how you deem appropriate. Securing your home, as common sense as that sounds, a lot of people have the old-fashioned hurricane, not shutters, like not the accordions, like they either use plywood or they have to put on those really heavy planks that go on your windows or your doors. If you're not prepared or have enough time to do that, your house is going to be subject to further property damage. And if anyone has ever done that, put those hurricane shutters up, it's extremely tiresome. It's hell. I've told my neighbors I can't do it anymore. I can't help them because I have a bad back. And now all these people hire people to get it done. And I recently upgraded my home to put hurricane accordion shutters, but if people don't have that, you have to secure your property, whether it's vis-a-vis plywood or some sort of metal hurricane shutters. It's important to do that. And if you don't, sometimes your policy may actually not award you damages if you don't protect your home. And what I'm specifically talking about is what's called the duty to mitigate damages. So you have a job to protect your home pursuant to your insurance policy, and you have to make sure you review that policy prior to the storm to make sure certain things are taken care of. Obviously, you take down any sort of objects that can get ripped off your house, like this picture here shows a flagpole. Obviously, you would take that down. You would board the doors up. You would board the windows. You would make sure that your patio furniture is secure or not able to blow into your neighbor's property. So those are the common sense things that everyone needs to employ, and those are the common sense strategies that everyone needs to prepare with. Some things that people don't think about prior to the storm, but really as important, are taking pictures of your contents. Because, for example, at least in many cases that I've handled, when there's hurricane damage, a roof blowing off, or a flood, your contents get destroyed. And before you have a chance to photograph those contents, they're thrown out by you, your spouse, your kid, or a demolition company that you've hired. And the saying goes, if there's no documentation of the item, it's impossible to prove that item existed. So what we do is we tell our clients to open this device up, your phone, and videotape everything in your house before the storm. And it's good to have that videotape a week before with a video stamp or a date stamp on the video. And within that video, you can also take photos, but I like the video because it's stamped and it's a live documentary. Document everything you have in the house, from your mother's old-fashioned and antique china and silverware to your famous paintings that you may own, to your computers, to your baseball card collections, to your doll collections, to your golf cart in your driveway, to everything that you may own. So that's important to do. And you can just save that video on the cloud for hopefully never using it again. Once again, make sure your family knows what your plan is pre and post hurricane. And that includes your kids, your parents, your spouses, your cousins, your sisters and brothers, so people know where people are located. A lot of times we may have a plan and maybe we leave, but we don't tell someone. And they're concerned because a lot of times after a storm, the cell phones don't work because the towers are knocked down. So that's something important. Pay attention to the local news and pay attention to the local alerts. One of the craziest things you can do is go drive during a storm, to go look at the water, look at the ocean, look at the winds. That's when damages occur. When trees are flying, branches are breaking and trees are flying, is when people get hurt and people get stuck and bad things happen. And that also creates an issue on the the first responders. Now they got to come save you when they're worrying about other people. Just common sense again, and just nice neighborly thing to do. For example, I have an elderly neighbor. She lives alone, and I always check on her regardless of the hurricane. But make sure those people are okay. Be a good person. Talk to your neighbors. Make sure everyone has what they need, and if they're not able to get what they need, make sure you try to help them get what they need. So that's important. Unfortunately, in Florida, we do have a lot of storms, and there's a lot of times when there's damage to your property. The next couple of slides are going to go over just really what your obligation is if you do have a claim, and how to protect your property during the claims period before the repairs are done. So myself, you guys all have a homeowner's policy, I presume, or some sort of insurance policy to protect your house and your contents. If you're like me, you renew it annually and you look at your deck page, but how many people actually read the policy? I don't think anyone does. So it's important, excuse me, to know the policy that you're purchasing. Most people, if they own a home, are purchasing what's called an HO3, which is good coverage. It's a standard policy, but you got to make sure that the coverages that you're purchasing are pursuant to what you need. And there's 4 different types of coverages within everyone's homeowners. And I'm not going to get too geeky on it, but I'm just going to name them and briefly talk about them. There's coverage A, the dwelling. If you have a mortgage, the mortgage company is going to require you to have homeowners insurance in the amount of the loan. And just say, for example, you live in a $500,000 house, but you have a $300,000 mortgage. The insurance company is going to require you to purchase $300,000 of coverage. And the reason they care about that is because the asset that you're living in, the house, has a loan that needs to be protected in the event of a casualty loss. However, in the event that that house is blown over or burnt down in a fire, the $300,000 protects the bank and will pay the bank off, but does it provide you enough money to fix your house? If your house is a $500,000 house, you may want to look at upping the coverages to protect the full value of the house, to rebuild that house. We call that the rebuild cost. So my point is, look at your insurance policy, look at your mortgage to see how much your mortgage is. And if your mortgage is small and your property has a lot of value, make sure you increase that insurance policy to cover your replacement cost to rebuild that house. Every insurance policy, again, every mortgage company, I should say, requires you to buy that insurance. So that's coverage A, your dwelling. Coverage B is what's called other structures, and that would cover your screened-in patio enclosure. And if you remember prior years, a lot of the limits over the years have been being reduced by the insurance carrier. If you don't look at your policy every year, you may not pick this up. For example, I have a screened-in patio enclosure. When I first purchased the coverage, it was $50,000 of replacement costs. And I noticed this year, they just reduced it to $10,000 without me even asking, and the premium still went up. So I mentioned that because $10,000 would not fix my screened enclosure. I had to up it back up to $50,000. So pay attention to the details. That's coverage B. Your other structures could be a barn, could be a detached garage, it could include a street enclosure. So make sure you look at that policy upon renewal. Third is coverage C, your contents. People don't really know the value of their contents, but I just advise you to take a moment, look at the things that you have and the things that you've acquired over time, and make sure that you have enough coverage for your contents. Contents would include your couches, your furniture, anything that's not affixed to the property, it would be covered under your contents. The desks, the computers, the memorabilia that you have, any sort of item like that would be considered contents. And I see a lot of people's policies after the fact, unfortunately, where there is damage and they don't have enough coverage for the contents. And if you don't have the coverage, you're not going to get paid. The insurance company does not have an obligation to pay you for coverages that you don't have. And then the fourth coverage, is what's called additional living expenses, ALE. And this is really important, folks. In the event your house is damaged catastrophically or to to the tune of you can't live there during repairs, you have to live somewhere else. And that's this coverage. It's called additional living expenses. This coverage needs to be enough to be able to support you in an apartment or a hotel for a amount of time to fix your property. Usually the coverage is good for 1 year. It's applicable for 1 year. And usually it's either 10% of your dwelling coverage or 20% of your dwelling coverage. But I recommend you take a higher limit on that, because this is something that, like, you're never going to use it, but when you need it, you really need it. And if you don't have enough coverage, you're going to be really upset you don't have it. So in the event your roof is blown off in a hurricane and you need to go live at Extend to Stay America while they rebuild your roof, and you have no coverage, you're going to pay out of pocket for that. And that gets quite expensive quickly. In addition to that, you have an obligation under the insurance policy to report the claim. It sounds common sense, but most people would call their insurance agent or their insurance company to make the claim, but you're required, and it has to happen within a certain period of time. You cannot wait 5 months and report a claim and say, oh, the hurricane blew my roof off. It's important to promptly notify the carrier as soon as practicable. Look, if the storm comes in on day one and blows your roof off, you don't have to call day one to say, my roof blew off. You need to take precautions to protect your property. But within a reasonable time, I would say would be a week to make that claim. And one common misnomer also is reporting it to the insurance agent is not the same as reporting it to the insurance company. You have to call the insurance company because they're the ones that have the risk, and those are the people who pay the claims. The insurance agent helps you procure the policy, and he has no fiduciary duty to you. So a lot of people just call their agent. That's not proper. The agent can assist you in making the claim and calling the company, the insurance company, but is imperative and required that you call the insurance company to put them on notice of the claim. Also, if you handle the loss yourself without the assistance of an attorney, you have to file what's called a proof of loss. That proof of loss is required by a certain time. It's a time-sensitive document, and you have to read your policy. And the proof of loss is the homeowner's application or statement of loss to the insurance company to tell them how much money they should get paid. If you don't do that, you're not going to get proper payment. And those are the things that most homeowners and consumers don't know how to handle the claim. And that's why they usually come to us to handle the claim. Also, there's different deadlines. I'm not going to go into all the different deadlines, but the Florida Department of Insurance has come up with consumer protections that are really helpful for Floridians. This talks about a 90-day to complete the investigation, but there's other time-sensitive deadlines that the insurance company has to respond to you. There's a litany of them, and they're basically called the Consumer Bill of Rights. You can Google it. It's under Florida statutes, or if you email it to me, I can send it to you directly. But they have to respond to your written correspondence within 30 days. They have to return your calls. There's certain affirmative things that the insurance company has to do to comply with Florida law. So it's important you know that, and it's important you remind them of those different deadlines as well. Again, if you're denied, it's important to consult a property attorney. That's what we do every day, and I'm not here to sell you on our services. I'm just here to tell you that's what we do in the firm. We handle hundreds and hundreds of these claims annually, and we do a very good job in protecting the consumers and making sure they get all the money that's owed to them. So that's a little bit about hurricane preparedness and how to prepare and how to deal with after the fact. My cell phone number, I'm going to give it to everyone, is 561-302-2518. Feel free to text me about the Hurricane Bill of Rights or call me about anything. We don't charge by the minute like most other lawyers do. We work for our clients. It's not the way we earn a living. And a matter of fact, everything we do, we get paid for by the insurance company, our fee. So it's a nice thing not to require a client to write a check to us. And we've been doing this for over 25 years as well.
Marty, I got a question for you, real quick.
Yes, sir.
It came in actually earlier at my networking meeting this morning. Something about citizens insurance these days and their roof requirements or something on their policy. Have you heard about that?
Great question, and I have, and I'm going to answer that question secondarily. But what I am going to address is there's a new law that's actually not signed by the governor yet, which so the legislature is right now in a special session, and I'm sure most of the people on this call understand the Florida legislature. But the Florida legislature has written a new bill that will modify the insurance laws going forward. The bill has not been signed by the governor yet, but we believe it will. The legislative session was very difficult on insurance. Unfortunately, this year, the insurance company had some wins that will reduce the availability of consumers to collect under certain policies. But at the end of the day, our firm worked tremendously hard to keep some provisions out of the bill the way it's passed currently. For example, Charles, there was provisions in the policy or in the new law that said if your roof was over 10 years old, the insurance company didn't have to provide you with coverage on that roof. And that would be ridiculous. That was not approved, or that was not passed. That was taken out of the bill. There are provisions in the bill that now, and I don't know if you guys are familiar, there's probably not, but there are roofing companies that go out and door knock. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, anyone? So I'm a lawyer, I can't solicit. So it's kind of, I get why they're doing it, because the roofers are going out, canvassing these communities, telling people they can get a new roof. And the insurance company is obviously ticked off as hell with that. So they changed that law where they're not allowed to door knock. And I kind of think that's good, level the playing field out, because it, you know, some of these people that door knock, it could be a, you know, they're door knocking on an old lady's door and she feels pressured to sign the deal. It's just not a good appearance, not good optics. So that law got changed. They also changed the law that will affect attorneys. And I don't think it's going to affect us too much because we do pretty clean work. And the way it works is the law provides attorney's fees. If we represent a homeowner in a claim for a roof, I'm able to get potentially my attorney's fees paid for by the other side, the insurance company. And what the law now states is that if you make an estimate or a demand for 100, just giving you an example, for example here, if I were to submit a claim for $100,000 loss and only were able to get $10,000 or 10% of that claim, I would not be able to collect my attorney's fees. And I may be liable to pay the other side's attorney's fees. So what they're doing, the legislature, is adding risk to the attorney's fee provision. And they're trying to make it the sword cut both ways, is what they say, meaning putting the plaintiffs at risk, plaintiffs and plaintiffs' attorneys at risk, that if they lose their case, they could be responsible for the other side's attorney's fees. Also, addressing Charles's question, Citizens is a quasi-government insurance company, meaning it's owned and funded by the state of Florida, by the taxpayers. So I've recently heard of that, Charles, where they're trying to say if your roof is over a certain amount of age, they're not going to insure it. Right. But I haven't seen that yet. Charles, can you share that with me?
Somebody had mentioned this morning, they were saying something that if your roof is over 25 years old, they will not write insurance for you until you have your roof changed or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it wouldn't surprise me with Citizens. So.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I would like to see that.
Yeah, I'll try to see if I can pick that up someplace.
So what the carriers, and just my call this morning with my client, this was really weird. So when you're renewing, this is for a condominium in Panama City, Florida. The questionnaire for the insurance renewal says if you've hired a lawyer or a public adjuster, they won't write you a quote. I thought that was crazy.
You mean if you've hired one in the past, or?
Yeah, it's on the renewal application for the insurance.
Really?
And if you lie, that's insurance fraud.
Huh. Crazy. Well, I mean, insurance, my insurance on my house went up, I think, close to 50% in the 1 year, which somewhat didn't surprise me, but that's kind of the way it works. So if you get back to kind of systems for people to truly understand, in order to protect yourself, Marty, would you suggest that people if you do see a hurricane kind of coming, is it time to either a paper or electronic journal of dates and times, and you're contacting people, or start a file on it? So, because I know sometimes,
Funny you
even
mentioned
when we
that.
were doing it, that we, yeah,
I
we
gave
don't
you
have
this
that.
book,
So, yeah,
right, Charles? I gave you one of these.
yeah,
So we have a practice that when a client retains us, and even before, it's a good practice that we tell them to diary everything, their conversations with their insurance adjuster, the conversations with whoever it may be regarding the claim, and just how the claim is being handled. Because later on down the road, if there is ever a deposition and you have a recollection of what happened written down, it could be electronically, it could be in a diary. It
mm,
holds a lot of weight. And if anyone has ever dealt with their own claim, it's not unheard of to have what's called a desk adjuster handle your claim. And then maybe a month down the road, there's a new desk adjuster that gets the claim. And then another 3 months down the road, a third desk adjuster gets the claim. So it really just prolongs your ability to get compensated. And if you document that, as we call documenting your damages, you're just going to have a better story to tell later on. And that's really important, Charles, too. Thank you for bringing that up.
yeah, because I know some people who thought that they were everything was going to be fine. And it kind of happened to me too. When you think some of your adjuster comes in from the insurance company, looks around and says, "Oh yeah, you got a lot of damage," and here's they write it up, and you feel comfortable when the person leaves because they agree with everything you said. Then all of a sudden it goes back to the insurance company, and you get a statement, 30 days, 90 days later, and it's 25% of what it should have been.
Yep,
And Marty, we went through that situation.
yep.
So,
And look,
and that's
most of the
normal. I
time,
think that's normal for a lot of people. So,
so most of the time, and if you understand the business and you've been through this, Charles,
mm,
when an insurance company has a loss, they hire an IA, which is an independent adjuster. Most insurance companies don't keep enough staff, people on because it's expensive. So they hire another company to go out there and write up the claim or adjust the claim. That person is called an independent adjuster. IA is what we call them.
mhm.
That person does not have the pen or the checkbook of the insurance company. They're an independent third party, and as Charles said, they're usually nice people that come in there, obsess or observe the damages and write down what they see on a software program called Xactimate, and then they submit that to the desk adjuster. The desk adjuster is the person who has the checkbook and the ability to pay a claim, not that independent adjuster. Furthermore, the independent adjuster, once he writes that claim up, his scope of work is done. He doesn't call the adjuster. He doesn't advocate for you. You probably don't even get his number, quite frankly. And Charles, I don't know how it was with you, but
And we don't get his number. And we don't get his report.
you don't get his report.
That's
Exactly.
right. Mhm,
So it's a microcosm in and of itself, and they're not there to help you. They're there for the insurance company.
mhm. So, at what point, Marty, would you say, and Kathleen, I'll get to you in a second. At what point do you think that it's a good time to bring in somebody like yourself or yourself into a situation? Where does that time frame, that aha moment that says, wait a minute, I'm not being treated fairly?
So there's a myriad of different examples of that. Let me give a couple. So there's a lot of times we're brought in on dollar one, meaning a condominium, for example, makes a claim and they get a flat out denial, right? If you get a flat out denial, the only way you can get paid is by filing a lawsuit, and an attorney is the only one that has that ability.
Hmm.
So if you get a denial, whether it's under the deductible or they say it's not a covered loss, we're brought in early in the game. In addition to that, on a just call it a normal homeowner's claim, a roof claim, you have a roof leak or half of your roof gets blown off from the insurance company. They come out there and obviously they can't deny the roof is damaged here. They're not denying it. They're accepting coverage and they say, okay, Charles, your roof is $20,000 damage and you have a $5,000 deductible. Here's a check for 15,000. But now Charles calls the roofer and the roofer says it's 85,000 to replace the roof. I don't have enough money. That's when the clients come to us. Usually when they're either short paid or underpaid and they need to get the right amount of compensation to make their house whole or to fix their house, that's when they come to us. And we don't ever take a fee. We only get compensated on new money that we get clients.
Mhm.
So in that example, Charles, if you got a check for $15,000 and I go out and you retain me and I get you another 50 for a total of 65,000, I only get compensated on the 50,000 or the new money that we bring to the table. So
Right.
the answer to your question is we're brought in early if there's a denial, and we're brought in various different stages by homeowners and consumers when they're either get, a lot of times people just don't want to deal with it because they don't want to deal with the claims process, the claims handling, the inspections, the legal work, the paperwork, and it's a job in and of itself. So they hire us right out of the gate. And then
Right.
there's other times when, a lot of clients think that they're Johnny Insurance and can get the claim paid correctly. And then they bang their head against the wall for a year and then they can't, and then they retain us.
Right.
And I wish they would have retained us earlier.
And I
Because
guess
the result would have
it's a
been-
good thing never to settle or sign any documents without being satisfied. Sometimes they try to sneak that in by sending you documents once they send you that first check. So
Yep. And again, that's called a release. If anyone ever sees a release, don't ever sign it until you talk to a lawyer.
Kathleen, you got a question?
Yeah, I had a question, back to when you have the independent adjuster come in. And again, I'm fairly new to Florida, so I don't know all the laws when it comes to that. Are you able to videotape that walkthrough? And again, I run a large organization and I know this year I'm terrified that we're going to be a very active year. And I think last year was just kind of a warm up.
Yep.
So I definitely want to be prepared. Legally, can I record that walkthrough with the IA?
Absolutely. Disclose it to him. He may not like it or her, but you're absolutely allowed to videotape it.
Can they decline it? Because I know in the state of Florida, I come from New York and Texas, and things are a little bit different with recording. I know
Well,
Florida,
you
you have to have
cannot
both
record
parties.
someone without their knowledge. What you're talking about is a telephone call. Are
Okay,
you talking about a telephone call? Or are you talking about an inspection?
inspection.
No, you can videotape it. You're permitted in Florida.
Okay,
And we do that a lot. We'll send our attorneys to a site inspection. So a lot of times they want to do a re-inspection and we have our clients videotape it. They go bonkers because it shows they're there for, 32 minutes and no, there's no damage.
okay,
But I would advise you to videotape it. I would advise you to tell the lady or the guy that's there, you're doing it.
right.
Don't do it shadily, but do it.
Mhm.
And they can't deny you from doing it. It's your property or your organization, your building.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect.
Any other questions?
And now that Kathleen, that you're new to the South Florida environment, and it sounds like you're an administrator of a big facility. Look at your policies now, or how we look at policies all the time. We don't charge people to review a policy because
We're in the process of renewing ours, and I used to be a paralegal in my past life a long time ago in Texas. So I do read all my documents. I do read all my policies, and I'm a fairly new homeowner here in North Palm Beach. So actually in a small HOA. So I'm very aware of my policies, and
Great.
my work is what's more concerning than my home at this point.
Sure. And if you need any assistance, we're here to help you.
Yeah.
I'm glad because I will keep your number.
Yeah, I would suggest being new to it and truly understanding the coverages you need, which is strange because the coverages you need, depending what you have in your policy, also depends where your office location is.
Yep.
If you're
West
east
of 95,
east of
east of
95 or
yeah.
west of 95, coverages change. So
Yeah, I have two locations. My larger location, which is 11,000 square feet, in one of my, and then I have a smaller 2,500 square foot. Those two are in Plantation, and then my other one is in Fort Lauderdale, right near Holy Cross. It's it's about 4,000 square feet. Obviously, that one I'm probably a little bit more concerned about. For that coverage. And we just got new equipment, so we did up our coverage to make sure we're covering our equipment too.
Nice.
yeah, because
Yep.
that coverage actually, I think, by Holy Cross would be east of 95,
Yes,
which would be different type of coverage than you need for the others.
we are right on federal highway
Right,
one. So
right.
we are,
And one thing I want to point out, just because it came to my mind now, is if you're a tenant in these locations versus a landowner, it's different as well. You got to look at your leases because I've been in claims where the tenant thought the property owner or the landlord provided the coverage, and the lease clearly stated it was the responsibility of the tenant to do it.
Right.
So the devil's in the details. Just Make sure
Yeah,
you read those. details.
so that's, and we have separate wind mitigation policies too. So we've, we've
Mhm.
looked at that. We're in the process of renewing those and I'm saying we need to up those.
Mhm.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
in the past, the practice administrator just signed off and just renewed the policy and didn't even, we had a lot of exceptions that I had to, kind of fight with and now have other spin-off policies to cover those exceptions.
Yep.
Good thinking.
Charles, I came to Florida 3 years ago because of Hurricane Maria. I was living in Puerto Rico, and I worked for FEMA for a month. And one of the issues was that who is responsible for the claim, the owner or the tenant. And you said that you have to read the lease, you have to read the small letters in your lease.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's in,
sir.
But
It's
when
our
you go,
lease.
but when you go to the federal government or to put a claim, they're always asking for the owner because he's the one that is responsible for that. But the priority, the urgency is in the tenant side. So what do you recommend?
So you're specifically talking about flood, by the way. You're not talking about wind
No.
damage.
I'm talking about wind damage and flood both.
Okay. So can you repeat the question?
Yes. Who is responsible for the claim? To the insurance company or the federal government? Because for FEMA, for instance, the responsibility is in the owner because he's the one who owns the property. But the
So
tenant,
FEMA,
Is
but-
that
but-
FEMA's
but-
separate?
FEMA's a federal agency. and
no, I
FEMA
know,
Okay.
but I'm taking the example from FEMA and
Sure.
bring it to this discussion.
Mhm.
If somebody wants to put a claim and to the insurance company, and the insurance company, what the insurance company is going to ask? You have to bring the owner is the one that is responsible to put the claim, or the tenant can move forward and put the claim because he's the one that have the urgency.
Sure. No, so I know where you're going with this. And the answer, you may not like it, is it depends. You got to read the leases and you got to look at the structure of the ownership. Look, the landlord of the building may have coverage as well, but he may not want to provide his coverage, and pursuant to his lease to the tenant, he may say, tenant, dear tenant, you know what a triple net lease is? In triple net leases, the tenant pays all those pass-throughs, and those costs are going to be paid for by the tenant. And in
Okay.
the example of a triple net lease, the tenant makes the claim because he has the insurable interest, and that interest runs with his land. So
And I think what he's getting at is FEMA, like FEMA wants to deal directly with the owner of that building.
yeah,
But again, if the owner passes that down onto the tenant, because I have a triple net lease, then I can go to FEMA for assistance because the owner of that has then passed that responsibility on to me. I
Yep.
think that's what he's getting at. How do you know whether you can go to FEMA? But I could go to FEMA if I'm paying triple net and not the responsibility is put on me in my lease. I can take that lease to FEMA and say I am responsible for this. So I think that answers.
but just be clear, FEMA doesn't do jack. I mean, if you're dealing with FEMA, you got a problem. That means you have no insurance, and you're dealing with a federal agency, and it's usually for.
It's more residential. than it is
Yeah,
commercial.
no, it's not going to be good. It means you have no insurance because FEMA's not going to pay your wind claim.
No. I just brought the example because that was my experience in Puerto Rico when I was doing some evaluation of some properties. So, but the same applied to the insurance companies. If you have the triple net lease, so you have the responsibility. You're paying for that, so you can go and put the claim.
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, thank you.
Yep.
No, some good questions, some great questions in different situations. Any other thing, any angle, Kathleen, any other questions?
No, I just know that I'm working on, I have a binder that I call my Bible for hurricane and emergency preparedness. I know it's an ever thing in progress. I have all my contacts for my vendors, who to call, my employees, emergency tree, who does what, who comes in for cleanup afterwards. So I just encourage everybody to have something like that in place again before it happens. I came on board with Fort Lauderdale Eye Institute and said, "Where's your emergency preparedness plan?" And they didn't have one. And we were expecting a hurricane in like 2 weeks. So I put it together quickly. And again, it's something that you have to review, even like a business plan every year to update it. So I encourage everybody to do that, even for your home. I mean, I
Right.
have one for my home. So with my bug out bag.
Yep.
But I had where doctors, I was working in my last place I worked where the doctors left and went to Orlando, and then it went over to Orlando, and then they went, came back inland. I had one doctor went off to California, couldn't get back because he couldn't get any flights to come back in. So yeah, that was crazy. That was a while
Yeah.
ago, but it happens.
Yeah, I remember that Hurricane Will where everybody from here went up to like the Orlando and Tampa area, and
Yeah.
the hurricane shifted
Yeah.
and was heading for Tampa and Orlando, and they had to come right back down. It was like crazy stuff. So crazy
So-
stuff.
Unpredictable.
Yeah. All right. Any last words, Marty, Nick? Anything?
Not for me. Thank you.
Okay.
You guys covered everything I was going to bring up. Thanks.
Good. I appreciate everybody here. And again, I will send out the link to this video. I think it's important for people, especially for a lot of doctors who didn't have time. It's worth the 50 minutes to look at this. I mean, there's a lot of information and gives you really cause to stop and think about making sure that you have everything correct. So again, I appreciate everybody's time and look forward to, go ahead.
Charles, one last question. I know we talked about doing the video, and that's last year I did still pictures. If we do a video, what is the time frame that is? I know you're saying like a week, but sometimes a week we're in that panic mode of trying to, how are we shutting down? What is that time frame? Is it 30 days? Like, what is a reasonable time frame to say if we took the video that it's acceptable? Like I know a year ago is probably not because things do change. Can you guys help me out with what?
So yeah, some policies, I always say within 30 days
30
is
days,
reasonable because there may be some limits on it. And all you have to do is just put them on notice. You don't have to have your complete claim figured out. You just got to call the insurance company, put them on notice, and then they'll send someone out, and then you can do your work to prove your damages as well. But there could be provisions in the policy that have time limits. So I always say within 30 days, but I will tell you, we've had cases that they haven't reported a claim until 6 months, and you're like, why didn't you do it? And there's extenuating circumstances, but we've had cases like that where they just don't even make the claim. They forgot, they didn't know, or they called the agent and the agent didn't make the claim. So just to be safe, I say within 30 days.
I think
And
Kathleen,
then-
Kathleen was saying if I take a video
Prior.
in other words, June 1st, I take it probably June 1st. Is that going to carry me through the whole
Yeah.
hurricane
I would say within the current year that you're in.
within the
Okay.
current year? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
all right.
'cause
No,
things things will change, but the majority of what you have, or in case Kathleen, let's say you do have new equipment going into your office, you want to make sure you have an adjunct tape or whatever pictures to say this was added during the summer or something like that, I would think.
Right.
So
Yeah.
would a good rule of thumb, Marty, be to just have that video recorded at the beginning of each hurricane season?
Yeah.
Right
That's a good
before the
rule.
hurricane
That's what I'm
season?
thinking, like June
Yep,
1st.
unless you add equipment, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Better
Perfect.
be prepared than not. So again, everyone, thank you. Marty's information is right up there on the screen if you need it. If anybody didn't get that down or, wants to call me first, I'll be glad to share that with you. And Kathleen, being new to this area, maybe a one-on-one conversation with Marty's firm just to be on the safe side might be good. And that consultation to make sure that all the ducks are in a row for, because it sounds like if something did happen, you have a lot at risk. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
great.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you much,
for hosting,
everybody.
guys.
Appreciate it. Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.